The Enemies by the English poet Elizabeth Jennings was first collected in book form in the collection Selected Poems in 1979. Written in the 1950s, however, the poem reflects the atmosphere of post-war Europe, overshadowed by the trauma of the Second World War and the emerging tensions of the Cold War. Jennings was writing at a time when fears of invasion and ideological infiltration were very real, particularly in Eastern Europe, where many countries had come under Soviet influence. The poem evokes the atmosphere of divided cities like Berlin, where suspicion, surveillance, and a loss of personal freedom had become part of daily life. Jennings captures the psychological impact of oppression, not through violence, but through mistrust and quiet internal breakdown. In the poem, Jennings imagines a city at the moment of an invasion and occupation by an enemy force. Rather than resisting the incomers, the townswomen seem resigned. They prepare for the arrival not with weapons, but with lights and food, and they even go so far as to entertain the band. The real occupation, however, comes later and more subtly, as a creeping psychological fog that poisons trust and unity. Suspicion spreads among neighbours, and fear quietly corrodes social bonds. In the end, the city isn't destroyed by an external force, but collapses from within. The enemy triumphs without violence, simply by watching the people undo themselves. The poem comprises 3 stanzas of 6, 6, and 8 lines. It has a bass meter of iambic pentameter, dum, 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 dum. Although Jennings modulates the rhythm in places with metrical inversions, i.e. the substitution of a trochee, dumdy, e.g. entered, for the regulation I am, dum, with substitutions of other metrical feet, such as anapaests, dum, and with truncated lines, e.g. or what strange tongue they spoke, which is iambic trimeter, dum, dum, dum. There's a rhyme scheme of A, B, A, B, B, A in the first and second stanzas, and of A, B, A, B, A, B, B, A in the third. The majority of rhymes can be described as full, single, or masculine rhymes, where the rhyme falls on the final stressed syllable of the line, e.g. and band, and awake and take. There are, however, a number of rhymes which are single rhymes but are only half rhymes, where the rhyme falls only on the final consonant sounds, e.g. take and spoke, and filled and told, as well as double or feminine rhymes, where the rhyme falls on the penultimate stressed syllable of the line, e.g. invasion and devastation. The dissonance and sense of unease created by these subtle rhythmic and rhyming shifts mirrors the insidious nature of the invading forces' psychological warfare. Their ability to unsettle and destabilise the town, not through overt violence, but through the erosion of trust, routine, and language itself. Jennings' diction is straightforward. Her factual tone creates a flat, almost monotonous feeling, which mirrors the town's calm acceptance and quiet dread. This subdued atmosphere allows Jennings to explore the subtler psychological effects of occupation, particularly how it fractures previously stable social roles. Jennings draws a subtle contrast between the town's women and its men. In stanza 1, the women act. They are awake with lights and food, and entertained the band. Gestures of hospitality that may suggest either resilience or resignation, but which show a kind of practical agency. The men, by contrast, are psychologically shaken. In stanza 3, Jennings describes how man meeting man speaks cautiously. Old friends close up the candid looks, suggesting mistrust and the breakdown of former bonds. The arrival of the soldiers seems to have destabilised the men's authority and self-perception, and Jennings may be quietly critical of this, portraying them as passive, disoriented, and incapable of meaningful resistance or adaptation, especially when compared to the women's outward decisiveness. The title, The Enemies, is deliberately ambiguous and multi-layered. On the surface, it refers to the occupying force, those who arrive in the town unexpectedly, yet are greeted with superficial civility. The fact that the townswomen offer lights and food and even entertain the band suggests a performative hospitality, perhaps born of fear or resignation. However, as the poem unfolds, it becomes clear that the more insidious threat lies in what happens afterwards. Suspicion and silence creep in, eroding trust. The townspeople, once a collective, begin to fragment, becoming enemies to one another in thought and spirit. The poem begins with the declarative sentence, "Last night they came across the river and entered the city." Its blunt and factual tone suggests that it was a done deal. The calm efficiency of the sentence mirrors the way in which this invasion was carried out cleanly and efficiently. Note how Jennings launches straight in with the pronoun they, without first referring specifically to who she means. Not only does this create a sense of uncertainty, with a nameless, faceless, occupying force, but it also means that the poem can be read on a universal level, as it is not about any one specific invasion. The image of these forces coming across the river suggests the breach of a border. The enjambment at the end of the first line not only creates a sense of momentum, of an unstoppable force, but the visual separation of the phrase "entered the city" at the beginning of the second line, followed by a caesura, also signals that this is a definitive, momentous event. The fact that women were awake with lights and food suggests that they were ready and waiting, that this incursion was perhaps not unexpected. These unidentified forces have been given a welcome of sorts, with lights to guide their way and food to sustain their bodies. The women have even entertained the band. This is ambiguous. It may just be a reference to the men being given hospitality, but it could also be being used euphemistically to suggest the far darker interpretation of coerced sexual activity. The choice of the word band to describe this collective male force is also interesting, as it has softer, romanticised associations, such as in the phrase band of brothers. Jennings' use of polysyndeton with the repetition of the coordinating conjunction or at the beginning of lines 5 and 6, combined with the enjambment, conveys the women's fear and confusion. Not asking what the men had come to take, or what strange tongue they spoke, or why they came so suddenly through the land. Note how each or introduces a different dimension of uncertainty. First motive, then language, then speed. All elements that normally allow people to rationalise danger. Here they have nothing to work with. Although there is an emotional flatness to this list, there is a barely concealed panic beneath the surface. Jennings deliberately unsettles the reader's ear with the subtle breaking of the pattern of full rhymes, with the half rhyme of awake, take, and spoke. This dissonance seems to mirror the town's loss of stability. Things sound as though they should fit, but they don't. Note also that there is no mention of the men of the town in this stanza. They are notable by their absence, but Jennings does not give any indication of why they are not there. Are they physically absent, or are they just impotent in the face of the invasion? In the second stanza, we have moved from the recent past of last night to the narrative present, and so the verb tenses also shift to the present. Now in the morning all the town is filled with stories of the swift and dark invasion. This temporal shift forces the reader into the same moment as the townspeople. We are now observers of the unfolding consequences of the invasion as they happen. In the cold light of day, the women have started to take stock, and rumour and conjecture are flying around. The word stories here is significant. It introduces uncertainty, retelling, and speculation. No one has clear information. Everything is second-hand. The adjective swift not only suggests the clinical precision of the nighttime invasion, but the adjective dark also evokes both literal night and metaphorical moral ambiguity or evil. The poem continues, the women say that not one stranger told a reason for his coming. This sudden zooming into individuals, i.e. not one stranger, is chilling. Instead of clarifying, it adds a further sense of mystery. Although these men aren't a faceless mass anymore, but singular presences, none of them is saying anything. Even after a night of hospitality, they remain strangers. Is this a conspiracy of silence, or are the invaders themselves just puppets, unaware of their own purpose? The word coming has a biblical, almost ominous feel, as though their arrival is a kind of fated or foretold event. While the motive for the invasion has not been articulated, the intrusion was not for devastation. Peace is apparent still on hearth and field. Jennings's choice of the word intrusion is interesting. The word invasion is militaristic and forceful, while intrusion is a soft word that downplays the gravity of the incursion, although it is no less violating. This isn't out-and-out war with a scorched earth policy, but seems to be more about territorial expansion, subjugation of the population, and an appropriation of resources. The phrase peace is apparent here is interesting. It appears to be peaceful, but just because there isn't any actual fighting, it doesn't mean that this isn't an act of violence. Outwardly, life on hearth and field, i.e. at home and at work, are normal. The invisible damage has already begun, yet all the city is a haunted place. The city has taken on an eerie feel. The adjective haunted seems to be working as a transferred epithet. Rather than describing the city's atmosphere, Jennings seems to suggest that it is the feelings of the townsfolk themselves who are being weighed down by intrusive thoughts that won't leave them alone. Although we've been told at the end of the previous stanza that peace is apparent, it is clear that these people no longer have peace of mind. Even though there's been no visible devastation, the city is full of ghosts. Not literal ones, but the ghosts of trust, openness, and shared humanity. Man meeting man speaks cautiously. Everyone is watching what they say. The enjambment at the end of the second line creates a visual separation. Old friends close up the candid looks upon their face. This visual break suggests the abrupt beginning of a new way of being with each other. They can no longer look at each other openly. They can no longer be candid or frank and honest with one another. Relationships, even long-standing ones, have broken down to become performative and permeated by suspicion. Everyone is going through the motions. They shake hands, but this is merely a formality rather than the show of friendship it once was. There is no warmth in hands accepting hands. This is an example of synecdoche, where a part is used to represent the whole. In this case, the word hands is used to represent the whole person. Jennings uses this technique to enhance the idea of emotional and psychological separation. The hands are separate from the rest of their body, including their hearts and minds. Note the contrast between this cold image of physical contact with the earlier image of food, light and warmth. The town has become a place where strangers are welcomed, but friends cannot connect. Jennings creates pathos with the image of each of them pondering, better hide myself in case those strangers have set up their homes in minds I used to walk in. She effectively captures the insidiousness of fear in these lines, in the way that it isolates individuals and erodes the fabric of community. The metaphor, those strangers have set up their homes in minds I used to walk in, is beautifully evocative. It brings to mind the idea of a cuckoo in the nest, or a parasite, an enemy who has made themselves at home and got their feet under the table. This is a movement away from the physical invasion of the first stanza to a psychological and emotional invasion. There is a fear that the people have been colonized from within as well as from without. The phrase "I used to walk in" is very evocative. It suggests how intimate these relationships once were. To walk in someone's mind is to be trusted, welcome, and familiar. The lines "better draw the blinds even if the strangers haunt in my own house" are an extension of the metaphor of minds being spaces where people can set up home. This image is particularly horrifying. It is tempting to read the act of drawing the blinds as self-protection, but it also implies sealing oneself in with something that is potentially dangerous. There's a tragic irony here. The thing they think will protect them, i.e. separation, suspicion, and emotional retreat, may in fact be what finishes off the damage. The blinds are drawn not just against the stranger, but against friends, loved ones, and the community itself. The anaphora of "better hide myself" and "better draw the blinds" emphasizes the speaker's instinct to retreat and protect themselves. This repetition creates a sense of urgency and isolation. The need to withdraw becomes a kind of mantra. The townspeople are no longer unified. They are inward-looking, suspicious, and afraid. This links to the idea of divide and conquer. The enemy hasn't had to use violence or force. Their mere presence has fractured the town from within. Jennings seems to suggest that fear and mistrust are more powerful tools of control than direct attack. The final stanza crystallizes the poem's warning. Violence doesn't always announce itself with guns or bombs. Sometimes it enters quietly, takes root in the mind, and makes people afraid of each other. Jennings explores how the psychological aftermath of invasion, suspicion, fear, and emotional self-protection can be just as destructive as physical war. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments section below, and I'll do my best to answer them. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more videos on English language topics and exam techniques and English literature texts.